As with the previous video, this video of course was sponsored by having a day job, because your boy doesn't have a sponsor yet. Gamer Sups, my application is in with you. The ball is in your court. Hello, all of you wonderful people out there in YouTube land. I am Glen Williams, the film optimist. Last week we decided to try an experiment where we were actually doing our first ever haul video on the channel. I shared my haul from the Shocktober sales from both Shout Factory and Kino Lorber, and I cannot wait to check my numbers in YouTube Studio and see exactly how well that video did. So if you'll just excuse me for a second. Oh. Well, let's do it again.
Well, Frank, this looks like one of those long, hard ones.
So last video, as I explained, both Shout Factory and Kino Lorber had actually done individually sales called their Shocktober sales. But it turned out late in the month I discovered that yet another company was doing a Shocktober sale. That company was Arrow Video, which fans of boutique Blu-ray labels will recognize that Arrow does some really high quality re-releases and remasterings of classic exploitation and genre cinema. So of course I had to put in an order for Arrow, and we're going to be taking a look at what exactly I got from Arrow today. Alright, so opening up the box, the very first thing that I am struck by is, oh, look at that. Some lovely paper. Alright, and coming out of here first, we have 3 movies that I bought individually, but are actually part of a series. They do have a box set of this, but it was cheaper to get these 3 movies on their own. This is the Battles Without Honor and Humanity. And actually this is Proxy War, Police Tactics, and Final Episode, which are sort of a trilogy in and of themselves, but technically they are numbers 3, 4, and 5 of a 5-movie series. See, the Battles Without Honor and Humanity, which were directed by the same director as the Japanese film Virus, Message from Space, and both of the original Battle Royale films were written by screenwriter Kazuo Kasahara, who based them off of the actual autobiography of a Yakuza crime lord. The first 2 movies focused specifically on that character's rise to power, their life as a member of the Yakuza in the Hiroshima prefecture. However, the book also detailed a massive mob war that had occurred in Hiroshima. Toei Productions, looking at the success of the first 2 films in the series, said, hey, Kasahara, we would like you to make the 3rd movie in the series, but we would like it to be an adaptation specifically of the mob war. Kasahara responded and said, that sounds great, except it's a lot of characters, a lot of internal monologue and dialogue. I'm not certain how all of that would fit on the screen. I can't guarantee that a movie based on that part of the book is going to be a profitable movie. And Toei Pictures responded, well, you work for us, so you're gonna make those scripts for us. Which probably also carried a lot more weight, specifically because Kasahara had just built a new house for his family, and a lot of the money that he used to build that house had actually been borrowed from Toei because he was such a great employee of theirs. So the first 2 of these movies, the Proxy War and Police Tactics, were actually created specifically to adapt the mob war line from the autobiography. In order to adapt it, Kasahara actually went to the Hiroshima prefecture and spoke with active Yakuza members who had been members of the Yakuza during that mob war. He said that his interviews, in fact, were so emotionally draining for him that he suffered a modest nervous breakdown after interviewing them, but ultimately he realized that all of the people he had spoken to had watched the first 2 movies and had concluded that they were, they called them silly little plays, and therefore they were just not that concerned about his movies being taken seriously, which meant he wound up with unprecedented access to the members of the organization and to them telling unfiltered versions of their stories. The final movie in that original 5-movie series, final episode, which is right here, was the first movie in the series that Kasahara did not write himself. However, he was very supportive of the new screenwriter and even shared all of his remaining research with that writer. Between the two of them, they agreed that there was not enough material for a complete film out of what remained of the research that hadn't been used already. So the new writer's solution was to fictionalize the final chapter of the story. Kasahara said, hey, that's fine, but if you're going to do that, there's one character in particular you might not want to use because he's actually still an active Yakuza boss. The new writer completely ignored him, and Toei Productions wound up having
one of those long, hard ones.
All right, moving right along here. We have My Stepmother is an Alien, starring Kim Basinger and Dan Aykroyd. And also starring a very young Allison Hannigan and John Lovitz. This movie was directed by Richard Benjamin. Richard Benjamin was better known as an actor. He had starred, after all, in Westworld.
What about the thing where you go like this over the gun?
Fanning.
Yeah.
What about it?
Is that hard to do?
He had been the star of the original adaptation of Catch-22. He starred in a cult hit short-lived sitcom called Quark.
All right, are we ready?
Betty's.
We follow you to the ends of the universe.
I would follow you to the door.
And he had also co-starred in Love at First Bite, which I believe we actually covered in our Dracula series. Richard Benjamin had made a shift from just acting into film direction in 1982.
Is that hard to do?
With My Favorite Year, starring Peter O'Toole. And it was a film that actually wound up getting Peter O'Toole a nomination for that year's Oscar for Best Performance. This movie actually has a bit of an interesting history in that the original writer who pitched the story, Jericho Stone, used the title They're Coming. And it was originally supposed to be a drama that used the idea of an alien invasion as an allegory for child abuse. However, once the story had been optioned by Paramount Pictures, they decided that actually it would play a lot better as a comedy. For his part, Richard Benjamin said that when he signed on to direct it, the screenplay more closely resembled a horror movie than a comedy, so he had not gone into it actually expecting it to be something that was not supposed to be taken seriously.
What can I do? There's nothing you can do.
The movie was shot on a $19 million budget. It brought in $13 million at the box office. It was a box office bomb, and a lot of the critics, in particular, were not impressed with seeing Dan Aykroyd playing a romantic lead. Next up, we have Girls' Night Out. Now, Girls' Night Out is a fairly conventional slasher film from the early 1980s. It was produced by two Ohio attorneys who had decided that they wanted to get into the film production game. They hired a documentarian to direct. Among the cast of the movie is Julia Montgomery and Hal Holbrook. This entire movie was actually shot over the course of a single weekend. It was shot on location at Uppsala University in New Jersey. Initially, it was released in Tennessee and then toured the South and all of the independent theaters and drive-ins of the South. Then it was under a different title, though. It was known as The Scaremaker. It picked up the title Girls' Night Out shortly before it relaunched in Michigan as the first location on its northern and midwestern release. All right, and next up we have a box set here of He Came from the Swamp, the William Griffey collection. This is a Florida-based filmmaker. He created some very notorious exploitation films, including The Death Curse of Tartu, and I Eat Your Skin, both of which I believe are included in this set. Yes, they are. And also included in this set is a feature-length documentary on Wild Bill Griffey, the filmmaker who has spent most of his career producing these little exploitation, horror, and juvenile delinquent movies out of the Florida Everglades. All right, and last but not least, you can see here's the empty box all tapped out there. We have the Herschel Gordon Lewis Feast. Now, this box set, Herschel Gordon Lewis initially studied journalism and planned to be a documentarian, but he very quickly shifted over into the exploitation arena. He got into that sort of work originally by making burlesque films, nudist camp movies, and what they called nudie cuties, which were basically light-hearted romantic comedies with a whole bunch of nudity involved.
Hello, boys. Have a good night's rest. I missed you.
None of those movies are actually included in this set, however, because Herschel Gordon Lewis's legacy did not come from those types of movies. See, his entire career changed directions on the day that he turned to his Adventures of Lucky Pierre co-director, David F. Friedman, and said,
"Have you ever had an Egyptian feast?"
Has anybody ever made a movie that just had, like, a lot of blood in it? The result of that was a movie called Blood Feast, which launched the splatter genre, and it was, as he described it, just movies with a whole lot of blood in them. This earned Herschel Gordon Lewis the nickname the Godfather of Gore, and this particular box set features 14 films from that period of his career, including, of course, Blood Feast. There's also Scum of the Earth, which is nowhere near a splatter film. It's more what they called a roughie, which was a crime film with a little extra added layer of sleaze.
All you kids make me sick. You act like little Miss Muffet, and down inside you're dirty. Do you hear me? Dirty.
But it also includes other splatter classics as 2000 Maniacs, Color Me Blood Red, and, of course, The Gruesome Twosome, which is considered one of his major titles. All right, and there you have it. It turns out Shocktober was not quite over, but now I feel like we've gone over all of the Shocktober purchases. We can head on into the holiday season in good film optimist spirit. But before we head off into the holiday season, how was your Halloween season? Did you have any major additions to your collection? Any movies that you just had to watch as part of a Halloween tradition? Or were there any movies that you were particularly excited to give a watch just in time for Halloween? Drop into the comments below and let me know. And until next time, I am the Film Optimist, reminding you to watch like it means something.